Welcome to The Planner's Perspective with Jessie Kara. This is the podcast for wedding planners and couples navigating South Asian weddings and everything that comes with them. Culture, family dynamics, money, design, expectations, and the real conversations no one prepares you for. I'm Jessie Kara, a South Asian wedding planner and educator trusted by couples and families when things get complicated. Here we go beyond timelines and Pinterest boards and talk about what actually happens behind the scenes. If you're a planner stepping into South Asian weddings or a couple who wants to understand the process more deeply, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. Welcome back to The Planner's Perspective. I'm Jessie Kara, award-winning South Asian wedding planner and designer. In the last episode, I shared what growth looked like in the early years, from attending my first conference to building a portfolio in my basement to securing contracts and becoming the in-house decorator at a banquet hall. On the outside, it looked like things were working. I had consistent bookings. I was getting known. I was building something that felt like it was finally taking shape. But what I fully didn't understand at the time was that growth without structure eventually catches up to you. And everything I went through with my first pregnancy, you would think I would have slowed down, taken a step back, maybe built things differently. But I didn't. I went right back into it because at that point in my business, it wasn't just something I was building. It had become my identity. It was my responsibility. It was my income. And I didn't know how to separate myself from it. And I actually didn't learn how to separate myself from it for years later. So I kept going. In those first few months after my daughter was born, I was always gone. Because she ended up coming early, instead of subcontracting those bookings out for those 12 weeks, I took them back. Yeah. And I did what I thought I was supposed to do, which was to work and to keep everything moving. And I remember coming home from work and my daughter would cry because I was a stranger to her. That's a feeling that doesn't leave you. I would go into the bathroom, close the door, and just cry. Then I would wash my face, look at myself in the mirror, and walk out with a smile on my face like everything was okay. I don't even know who I was trying to convince in those moments, myself or my husband, but I kept going because in my mind, stopping wasn't an option. At the same time, the business was growing in a way that from the outside looked like success. I started taking on decor bookings for other companies. At one point, I was doing subcontracted jobs for 5 different decor companies. And when my team and I went out, people touring the venues would see us setting up and tearing down, and all they saw was my company t-shirts. So literally, it looked like I was everywhere. Now, that wasn't normal in my area for people to see decor teams with branded t-shirts and whatnot. So people started paying attention. But that visibility, it didn't happen by accident. It came from everything I was learning at the marketing conferences I was attending. After that very first conference, I learned the importance of education and learning and taking your lessons outside of what it is that you actually do and implement them into what you do. So I wasn't just working hard anymore. I was starting to understand how to be seen. I was easily doing 6 events a weekend, and these were not small events. These were full setups, full productions, full days that turned into full nights. Legit, I would pack up the truck to do the Friday setup. After the setup, we would come, unload anything that wasn't needed, load up what we needed for the Saturday at the back of the truck, at the front of the truck, and then go to the Friday event teardown, load that into the truck, go back, unload all the Friday stuff and have Saturday stuff ready, it's already in the truck ready to go, and then put the truck either I took it home or I parked it at the venue so that we could do it all over again the next day. And then there was times where we had 3 events in a day, but literally Friday, Saturday, Sunday, that's how it would work. And then Sunday night or Monday morning, I guess, at 4 or 5 in the morning, I would be going to return the truck and then go home to sleep. And Mondays were also my house decor teardown days, and Tuesdays were house decor setup days. So yeah, there was no real break. There was no real recovery time. It was just one event into the next event. And when you're in it like that, you don't question it. You don't stop and ask if this is sustainable. you just think this is what it takes. And the more people started noticing, the more I felt like I had to keep up with it. Like I felt like I couldn't stop because I was now like, this is it. There was business coming in. Like, how do I say no? And this is also when people started calling me an overnight success, and that makes me laugh because there was nothing overnight about it. There was years behind that moment that nobody saw, years of saying yes to everything, years of figuring things out the hard way, years of undercharging and over-delivering and pushing myself past what I should have been capable of at the time. But from the outside, all they saw was the visibility, the bookings, the momentum. And at the same time, I was pushing myself in other ways too. I entered a competition in a tabletop competition in Las Vegas, and I remember being so unsure of myself, so intimidated, so out of depth. I showed up with 3 pieces of luggage while other companies were arriving with, like, massive trucks, multiple trucks even, full teams, full setups. I remember looking around thinking, "What am I doing here?" Legit, I had a team member and my best friend, but I stayed and I showed up anyways. And after the competition, I remember speaking to some of the other companies, and they told me they thought I was going to win. They talk they took me showing up with these 3 pieces of luggage and just, like, going with the flow as a force to be reckoned with, whereas internally, I was a girl who was like, "Ooh, shit, I signed up for this. I need to show up. I need to do this." So hearing that kind of feedback from people at that level who I would like, "Oh my god, I can't even imagine building up to, like, being in a place to show up with multiple trucks and a full team for a competition." But yeah, that feedback at that level and then having some like really real conversations with people like Colin Cowie and David Tutera. I'm totally aging myself, but if you're not in the industry, you wouldn't know who they are. But yeah, it shifted something inside of me. And for the first time, I started to see myself differently. I came home and took action on that. I hosted a wedding decor showcase. At the time, it was the first of its kind in my area. I don't even know if anyone else outside the area ever did it. I rented out a banquet hall. I created multiple different setups and invited the public to come in and experience the work. Is wasn't just about showing what I could do, it was about positioning myself differently. And between the subcontract work, the exposure from Las Vegas, that showcase, like, now it was pretty, like, common knowledge for me to hear that I was an overnight success. Once again, what they didn't see was what it took to get there, what it was continuing to take to maintain it. Because while everything was growing, it was taking a toll on me. I was still working constantly. My weekends were gone, my evenings were gone. And even when I was home, I was not present. My mind was always on the next setup, the next client, the next thing that needed to be done. My marriage was beyond strained. There was constant tension because I was never around. And when I was around, I wasn't really there. In 2014, I had my second baby. Now, there was a lot of conversation. My husband was like, "Are you sure you want to do this? Like, everything you're doing, your company, like everything's going upwards. This is gonna like stall it." And I was like, No, it's not. I got this. I've always got this. I can do this. Don't worry about it." There's nothing I would trade. Like, I love my son, nothing in the world. That postpartum hit me so hard. It got to a point where I couldn't function the way I had. From the hospital, my son went to the warehouse before he even went home. And that alone says everything about where I was at the time. My husband had to quit his job to take care of me. And my mom also ended up coming to stay with us because even in that state, the business still needed me. I still needed to work. And that was the moment where something had to shift. Not because I wanted it to, because I had it like had to. I physically couldn't keep doing things the way I had been doing them. So I started building systems. I started creating processes, setting expectations, trying to put structure into something that had never had it before. I still made mistakes, but I didn't need to be in everything all the time anymore. Those systems became everything. Then, when my father in law was passing, he was in palliative care for 2 weeks. I was able to step away the entire 2 weeks and be with him in his final days. And that mattered. It's such a gift. I, to this day, am so grateful I was able to do that and that I had built something where I could do that. But on it, in all honesty, I couldn't fully disconnect because I had a funeral booked for the day of, sorry, I had a reception party booked for the day of his funeral. And I remember feeling so guilty that I wasn't going to be there that I started to overcompensate. I gave the clients upgrades they didn't even pay for, like linens for all of their tables, additional draping, extras that literally added up to thousands of dollars because I felt like I needed to make up for not physically being there. And in all of that, I forgot one thing. I had mentioned adding pearl strands to some branches on the stage. I forgot to tell my team. And after everything I had given this client, everything I had added, they complained about the 2 strands of pearls. And when I mentioned, okay, but I gave you all this, they said it didn't matter what, like all the extras, that was on me. That was a decision I made. She just knew that the 2 strands of pearls were missing. So, like, there was a lot of emotion, like, family is still coming over to grieve. We've got the funeral. So, I gave her a refund of $500, but that moment changed me. That conversation changed something in me because up until that point, I was running my business from emotion. I was making decisions based on how I felt, based on guilt, based on wanting people to be happy, based on wanting to over deliver so no one could ever say anything negative about me. I thought that's what built strong relationships with clients. And I thought if I just gave more, cared more, showed up more, I would be appreciated. But that moment showed me something very differently. It showed me that without structure, without clear expectations, boundaries, clients will default to what benefits them, not because they're bad people, but because that's human nature. And if you don't define what's included, what's not, what matters, and what doesn't, they will define it for you. And that is where resentment starts to build. That is where you start feeling like you're giving everything and it's still not enough. That's where you start questioning your worth, your pricing, your effort. And the truth is, it's not about giving more, it's about being clear. That was the moment I realized that boundaries don't ruin client relationships, they protect them. They create clarity. They create respect. They create a structure where both sides understand what's happening. And without that, it doesn't matter how much you give. It will never feel like enough. That was a hard lesson to learn. Because as creatives, we attach ourselves to what we do. We see it as our craft, our art, something we pour ourselves into. But a lot of the times, clients don't see it that way. They see a transaction. And that doesn't make them wrong, but it means we have to operate differently if we want to protect ourselves. At the same time, I was still growing, still building, still being seen, being called successful. But inside, there was this constant tension between who I was and who I was becoming, between what I had built and what it was costing me to maintain it. And that tension is what led into the next phase of my life. Because eventually you can't keep going at that pace without something breaking. And for me, that breaking point didn't look the way I expected it to. I'll see you in the next episode. If today's episode helped things click or gave you a new perspective, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what's coming next. This podcast exists to support planners in doing their best work and to help couples feel informed, confident, and prepared as they navigate their very own South Asian wedding. If there's something specific you want me to talk about, an episode idea you'd love to hear, a planning story you want to share, or a question you're sitting with, there's a link in the show notes where you can send it all in. I promise I will read every submission, and many of them will shape future episodes. You can connect with me at www.jessiekara.com or on Instagram at jessiekara. If you're ready to navigate South Asian weddings with intention and confidence, I'll see you there. And if this podcast is supporting you in any way, I would truly appreciate you taking a moment to leave a 5-star review. It helps more planners and couples find these conversations and keep the space growing. Until next time, trust your perspective, and plan with clarity.